Welcome to the How to Play Warmachine Battle Report, the live fire exercise. Just like a real trencher of the Signaran army, we are throwing you in the deep end and seeing if you survive. In this video, we are going to see every core rules interaction in the game and we are going to see how they all work. Just skipping the basic things like how to move a model or read a datasheet. In the next video, basic training, we're going to see why they work and cover how to read a datasheet, how to move a model, like really basic stuff. Almost kind of like you take a head wound in this live fire exercise, which you probably would with my safety standards. Then we get to the third and final video in this series, the advanced training. We're going to get deep into the nooks and the crannies, a step above the bare minimum of what you need to know to play the game, but still common enough that they will come up in like 90% of your games, But this video, safety off, live fire. A battle report between the Orgoth Cursebound Karda and the House Dusk Ghost of Ios Karda. Two perfect starter forces going head to head, and I explain everything. This video is a one-stop shop, with the next two videos being for those that like what they see and want to know the why behind the how. Now, if you want some more basic information, check out my video, What is Warmachine in 2024? And for the best lore guide around, check out my Warmachine Mark IV lore primer. Cool names, I know. I've done a bunch of other videos too, so crack open my Warmachine playlist for everything. Okay. Quick note before we begin, actually, sorry. If you hear me saying things that make it sound like time travel, saying, I've already shown you how to read a data card, that's because I wrote and filmed this video last, but then realized it's way more interesting, so you should be first, even if I'm not giving you sequential information. Don't worry, by the end of the week, all three videos will be released, so it's irrelevant in reality. Just kind of like some standard issue, Warcaster, Chronomancer, time shenanigans, You know what, actually, every time we time warp, because I say weird things, out of order, I'm going to put Warcaster Jesus, aka Victoria Haley, on the screen. Welcome to the culmination of a week of Warmachine rules knowledge, the live fire exercise, the in-depth battle report where I will break down every rules interaction so that even if you've forgotten half of what I said in the basic and advanced training videos, you will have the roles pounded into your skull so many times that by the end of this video, you'll think you don't even need to watch those first two videos. But you should. Really, you should. Just leave all three of these videos on constant replay, please. The algorithm does have me trapped, Please send help. Thank you. All right, we've built our army in the app and know how to read the data cards. So let's start a game and go through the rules as we need them. You can even follow along, actually, as we're doing game setup all the way through to completion, because what do we all want more than to completion? First up is pick your points level. 30 points is a good intro game. 50 points is a standard or narrative game. 75 points is American tournament, 100 points is European tournament, with official times from 45 minutes to 2 hours at the maximum points level, so pretty fast, really. I go over game sizes more in my other videos though, so check those out. For this, I'm going to play two Kardas against each other because I think they look the coolest, and Karda versus Karda is a great first step into the game. One box and you're in. Setting up the table with terrain is nice and quick. You want to aim for 3 to 4 pieces of terrain in each quarter, roughly. You want to make sure you're hindering line of sight with maybe some buildings, and movement with forests and lakes. Trenches are good too, just really cool, Make sure it's asymmetrical, and most importantly, looks cool. I'm using these lovely fancy buildings from Battle Systems in the UK. They're printed card buildings, so no extra hobby work for me, and then some 3D printed terrain off Etsy. I personally really like a dense, highly thematic city fight board, or like of a ruined city, or a trench system because it just looks cool AF, it means as foretold. But for this video, I'm keeping the board a bit more laid back and clear so you can see all the action. You'll also need some dice. 6d6 is the most you're ever going to need. A great amount because you can buy a pack of 20 and then every time you roll a 1, just throw it in the bin. A tape measure, a few tokens to symbolize your focus or remind you of ongoing effects, and some templates which, if you've purchased certain boxes, you can cut out from the back of the box for things like clouds or burning woods. Now for my tokens, I'm using some old tokens that War Machine Privateer Press actually made, but you can use anything. And there are official, super cool looking tokens from Broken Egg Games. I just don't have access to those, otherwise I would definitely be using them. I think they look amazing. You need to pick a mission to play, and the app has you covered. You can either play a narrative mission or a steamroller mission. The steamroller pack is what they use in competitive tournaments. It's available for everyone, so let's play the first mission from that. This is called Recon, and simply follow the map to place your 50mm, 40mm, 30mm and 20mm cash and flag objectives. Placements, placement is of course different for every mission. However, a few general rules. You control an objective by being within 3 inches of it. 50mm objectives can only be controlled by leaders, cohorts or battle engines. 40mm objectives can only be held by leaders. 30mm objectives can only be held by leaders or solos. Contesting an objective is any model, not just the type needed to control it. This is all done to ensure balanced lists are taken. You can't just take all the big scary stuff because they can't hold everything. Flag objectives are like you plant the flag in this hill, raising the flag, it's like that. Place the flag objective, and then whoever's objective that is picks a piece of terrain within 5 inches of that flag, and that terrain becomes the objective area you need to control. You control the terrain by being within 2 inches of it. Easy. Caches are they're a bit of loot for the enemy to take. To score a cache, end your movement in base-to-base contact and forfeit your combat action, like you're smashing it open, and that destroys the cache and scores it for you. The way you win this mission is as soon as you get 3 more victory points than your opponent at the end of their game turn, not your own, you win the game, or it goes until the 7th round. This is very standard for scoring War Machine games. You can also win by killing the enemy leader or by death clock, which means whoever runs out of time first loses. We decide first and second player with a single dice roll. Whoever rolls highest chooses. Ghost of Ios will go first. Second player gets to decide their deployment zone, with the first player deploying their entire army first. Then the second player deploys their entire army. Note that for most scenarios, player 1 has a 6-inch deployment zone while player 2 has an 11-inch deployment zone. Just something to keep in mind, but always refer to the actual machine you're playing. Note that for units of models, they must all be placed within unit coherency, which is 2 inches of the first model placed on the table. We then begin the game with the first player taking their first turn. We keep this order for the entire game, with players doing everything they want to do with their entire army before ending their turn and passing play to their opponent. Warcasters begin the game with their focus allowance found on their data card. That's 7 for Moraine and 7 for Auriax. The game round is 2 player turns. Each player turn has a maintenance phase, control phase, and then activation phase. In the maintenance phase, you remove all focus from your warjacks and make sure there are no continuous damage effects. Of course, in the first turn, we ignore this, so we go to the control phase. Warjacks naturally gain 1 focus point of their own through the power-up rule as long as they are in your Warcaster's control range. Then we can move our focus from the Warcaster to any number of Warjacks within their control range until there's a maximum of 3 focus on as many Warjacks as we want. And if we had an upkeep spell effect in play from the previous turn, we could choose to pay its upkeep cost of 1 focus or allow it to expire. If we are using a Warlock, the maintenance and control phase works slightly differently, what with how Focus and Fury are slightly different mechanics, but these are both Warcasters, so we don't need to worry about that. That will come in other videos. All good. Which brings us to the activation phase and the meat of the game. Here you will go through your entire army making the actions you want to make unit by unit. Note, this is not a game with a movement phase and an attack phase. This is an action-based game done unit by unit. First, you make a movement action, then a combat action. There are 4 basic movement actions, which are Advance, Aim, Run, and Charge. Advance and Aim are basic actions that allow you to take a second action afterwards, while a Run instantly ends your activation, whereas a Charge allows a melee attack afterwards, okay? Advance is moving your movement speed. Aim means no movement, but you get a bonus on your ranged attack. So once you know how to move a model and roll dice, you know how to play War Machine. Let's get to it with turn 1. Selecting our first model, the Ghost of Ios Mage Hunter Sniper Team, we measure the range of its gun, which is our longest range of 14 inches, and see that no matter what we do, turn 1 we aren't able to shoot the enemy. This gives us the all clear to move everybody up the board. The sniper team has a speed of 6, and so we advance them their speed. Measure from the front of your base to the front of your base when you move. You can use a tape measure or specific fancy widgets, whatever you prefer really. You can move under your movement speed, but you can't move over it. Moving half your speed, totally fine. Moving 0.0001 millimeter over your speed, absolutely not. How dare you, sir? Or siress. We decide not to run with the sniper team because they don't want to be too close to the enemy. This means the sniper team has nothing to do with their second action, but that's fine. We end their activation. The Mage Hunter Commander is going to run. Note, I'm using a proxy model because I think this is a cool looking model. The key to proxies is make sure it's on the correct base size and has roughly the same weapons, so no one is going to complain. A run is simply your movement speed plus 5 inches. It doesn't matter if your move speed is 4 inches or 10 inches, your run is always plus 5 inches. The commander has a speed of 7 plus 5, so we move him 12 inches. A run counts as both of your actions, so his activation immediately ends. Now the assassins and rangers are going to move. These are all units instead of solos. For their movement, it's basically the same as the solos. Pick any of the models in the unit and measure their movement exactly as before. These units are both running, so they move 12 inches. After moving the first model, simply pick up and place the other models in the unit within 2 inches of the model you just moved. Within means that any part of your base, even just the tiniest bit, needs to be in a 2-inch bubble measured from the edge of the first model's base. And seeing it again with the second unit, we measure the run and place the rest. Valis also runs. Moraine, who is a warcaster, decides to move and will cast a spell. Now spells are kind of like a bonus action you could take at any point in your activation outside of your normal move and combat action. You could always cast a spell is a pretty good rule of thumb, even after a charge or a fight action, but not after a run, because a run ends your activation immediately. So, Moraine moves and casts Battle Lust on the Mage Hunter Assassins. This is an upkeep spell which we'll discuss next turn. For now, it costs 2 of our focus points. Its range is 6 inches, and as one of the models from the target unit is in range, we cast the spell. This will give the assassins an additional die in melee, but also give them -2 defense. Very glass cannon, very elfy, nice. Finally, we move Spectre, the coolest dude on the table. I mean, really? A giant robot wearing a cloak? Yes, king. Such riz, slay. Now, warjacks are all about focus spending. A normal move and normal attack is free, but pretty much everything else will cost you 1 focus to do. So, if he wants to keep up with the rest of the army with a run, that will cost him a focus, and is still a run, so will end his activation immediately after. But this is turn 1, so that's all he wants to do despite him having 3 focus, so he runs just like everybody else. With all models for the Ghost of Arthas activated, player 1 ends their turn, and we allow the Orgoth Curse-bound Cadre to take their vile and heinous moves. Okay, maintenance phase again, it's turn 1, so nothing. Easy. Control phase. The Ravener does not automatically gain 1 focus because it is a monstrosity, not a warjack. Although in every other way it is a normal warjack, when it comes to how it generates and keeps focus, it's slightly unique. Nothing else to do here. Activation phase. Now the Cursebound don't have any range in their army at all, so no need to hold back. Everyone runs forwards. That's movement speed plus 5 inches. Some are going to hide behind forests or buildings, but yeah, everybody runs forwards. We don't need to cover this. You get how to move. Round 2, and we continue with the Ghosts of Ios second turn, and this is where we're going to drill into you the shooting mechanics. Maintenance phase, we remove all focus from warjacks. No expiring status effects, so on to control phase. Moraine fills up her focus. The Spectre powers up naturally, gaining 1 focus. We then decide how many focus we want Moraine to give to Spectre, and we decide to max Spectre out at 3 focus. Again, all warjacks have a maximum focus of 3. If you recall, last turn, Moraine cast Bloodlust, which is an upkeep spell that cost us 2 to cast. Well, now in this control phase, after allocating focus to Warjacks, we decide if we want to upkeep our active spells. In this case, we definitely do. In fact, that's why we cast it last turn, because the active casting costs 2, but now it only costs a single focus to keep it active. So we spend the focus for upkeep. All upkeep is always a single focus regardless of how much the spell costs to cast. Focus allocated, that's the control phase done, and we go to activations. We're going to start with the sniper team back here because we get to discuss shooting and line of sight. With their big 14-inch range, they can just about shoot this Nasher back here, but it's behind a forest, which normally means our line of sight would be blocked, and so we can't shoot it. How do we determine line of sight? Very simply, if any part of your model can see any part of the enemy model, you have line of sight. There's a bit more to it than that, and there's rules for base sizes taking up certain volumes and other models intervening and raised terrain, but right now, the sniper team can see a Nasher, but the line of sight is drawn through a forest, which means my line of sight is blocked. However, a lot of gun mages have special tricks, and in this case, the sniper team have 3 different attack types on their sniper cannon, one of which is called Phantom Seeker, which allows us to ignore line of sight when making an attack. With range determined from base to base and line of sight discussed and figured out, we can begin the attack. This is a 2-roll system. First we hit, then we damage. We look at the rat of our weapon, in this case 7, we roll 2d6 and we roll a statistically average 7. 7 plus 7 gives us 14, quick maths. We then compare our combined number to the def of the enemy. Now the Nashers are very easy to hit with a def 11, and as we rolled equal to or higher than their def, we successfully hit. We then look at our power, in this case 12. We roll 2d6 and roll another 7. 12 plus 7 equals 19. We compare this to the arm of the Nashers, who are arm 17. For every point over their arm we deal 1 damage, so they take 2 damage. Taking the specific model we hit from 8 wounds down to 6. Even though we're attacking a unit, all attacks are still done model to model. At this point, as we have attacked, our activation ends. Even though we didn't move or aim first, we can't do it after the attack. Why didn't we aim first? Because I forgot, and that's what makes this the most realistic how to play ever, because forgetting your rules is peak wargaming, honestly. However, the sniper team does have an ability called reposition, which is a special rule that allows them to do a 3-inch move if they didn't run or fail a charge, and so they're going to move 3 inches because they have a rule, so you might as well use it. And in general, if that's how you play War Machine, you're probably gonna win. I'm just throwing it out there. Use your rules. The Mage Hunter Commander is going to move his 7 inches, use a battle plan to make Spectre tough for 1 round, which he can do because of an ability he has and it tells us on the data card it can be done at any point in our activation. Then he's going to shoot this Grotton Champion with his Spear Cannon. Before we roll our hit rolls, we need to roll a d3 because we have a rate of fire of d3. We roll a 3, which is good because we're going to need as many shots as possible into this champion. And by the end of this attack, you'll really know how shooting works, okay? We got 3 of them, let's do it. Compare Rat to Def. Rat is 7, Def is 12. However, the commander has +2 to his attack roll from volume fire because the champion is a large based model. However, the champion gains +2 to his Def from ranged attacks due to his Blade Shield special rule. So they're both +2, which although makes them Rat 9 to Def 14, doesn't actually change what we need to roll. The difference from 9 to 14 is 5. On 2d6, we need to roll a 5. We roll above a 5, so we hit. POW 10 into arm 17. We have +2 from our volley fire, so we're looking at 12 versus 17. And remember, it's every damage over 17 that they take. So our minimum damage roll needs to be 6, which would give us a total of 18, and so we deal 1 damage. We roll another average 7, which we know is 2 damage, taking the champion from 14 to 12 health. We get to attack again, needing a 5 to hit, which we do. We roll our damage again, and we roll a huge double 5. As we are dice off 5, that means we've dealt 5 damage, taking the champion from 12 health down to 7. When it comes to attacks and damage, any double number means a critical hit. This doesn't do anything natively, but some abilities work when you roll a critical. The commander's final shot, and he gets above a 5 to hit, but then rolls below a 5 to damage, and that's his activation done. A bit of a tip, I like to roll my dice and then figure out what I needed to roll. It keeps the game flowing a bit faster, and if you roll something ridiculously low or high, you don't really need to figure out the specifics of did you need a 7 or an 8 to hit, you rolled a double 1, keep it moving. Valis has nothing to do this turn, so just moves up behind cover. The Rangers, seeing a weakened enemy, move to within range and open fire. They're within range and line of sight isn't blocked. Remember that each model is its own model despite being a unit. They all need to measure range and work out their own line of sight, but as they are a unit, they can't block each other's line of sight. Rat 7 into Def 12 but +2 from Blade Shield. The difference is 7, so we need a 7 on 2 dice and sure enough we hit. Pow 10 into Arm 17, that means we need an 8 to deal a single damage and we fail. Same again on the next model in line, 7 to hit and we hit. We don't beat the 17, no effect. Having realised how useless our shooting is into this absolute tank, we change tack and shoot our final shot into the Nashers again. We check range and line of sight and we can't quite get the same Nasher, so shoot into one of the others. Rat 7 into Def 11, we need a 4 and get it. Pow 10 into Arm 17, we absolutely smash it with a double 6, it's a crit but doesn't matter, and it does 5 damage, taking the Nasher from 8 wounds down to 3. Again, each model is an individual. The fact another model in the unit is already wounded doesn't actually matter or change anything for us and our target. We chose to target this one. Unit done. We swap to the assassins and move them up the board. They hide behind the forest. Smart. It's just Spectre and Moraine left, and in War Machine this tends to be where things get tricksy. War Machines and Warcasters are where all the big plays happen, but I'm going to keep it simple. Moraine will move up to within range of the champion and fire. Rat 6 into Def 12 but +2, so 14 means we need 8. We get it. Pow 12 into Arm 17, we need 6 for 1 damage. We roll a nice 10, taking the champion from 7 health down to 2. Spells can be used at any point in an activation, so we'll use it now, and Moraine will use Abyssal Gate. Arcane attack is 7 into Def 12, but then we read the champion's data card and realise he has Spell Ward, which means he can't be targeted by spells. So we stop that attack and finish the activation with our reposition ability moving 3 inches away from the enemy, just in case. Final activation is Spectre, who moves up and shoots with a spray weapon. A spray weapon works slightly differently to the other weapons so far. Draw a straight line from the middle of your base to the middle of your target's base, extending the line the full range, in this case 8 inches. Notice that due to our positioning, the line goes over both the champion and the keeper. That means we get to hit both. Spray weapons still need to roll to hit, but they do get to ignore things like cover, concealment, stealth, and other such things. We'll talk about that in another video. Despite our low rat of 5, we still managed to hit both of our targets. Into the champion first and we hit, followed by Pow 12 into Arm 17, and finally we chip off the final 2 wounds, getting the kill. The spray extended into the keeper, who we hit and now have a Pow 12 into Arm 18 roll. We are going to boost this attack. A focus on a Warjack or Warcaster can be used to boost a roll. You can boost an attack or a damage roll. You can only ever boost a roll once. A boost is an extra dice for your roll. So 3 dice with a difference of 7 between the Pow and the Arm. An 8 will cause 1 point of damage. We roll high. We manage to push through 8 damage. Although we have more focus on the Warjack, we have nothing we can do with it, as the rate of fire of our gun is only 1, so without a special rule called reload, we're done shooting. And that's the end of Ghosts of Ios turn 2. Here at the end of the first player's second turn, we do not yet score. Our first scoring window is from the end of the second player's second turn, and then every turn end from then on. Remember, the first to reach 3 more points than their opponent by the end of their opponent's turn is the winner. This means you always have at least 1 turn to take action and claw some points back. We go into the Cursebound turn 2. In the maintenance phase there's nothing to do, and in the control phase the Ravener, being a monstrosity, does not automatically gain 1 focus. The Cursebound have no shooting, so we might as well start measuring up our charge and deciding who we want to activate first. When charging, you take your normal speed and add 3 inches. Melee weapons tend to be either 1 inch or 2 inch range. You need to charge in a straight line, and you need to have line of sight to the enemy you're charging. So although these Nashers look very close to these assassins, line of sight can't be drawn entirely through a forest. Forests are very common, so let's discuss them quickly. If you're completely within a forest, then you count as having concealment. But past the first 3 inches into the forest, it turns from concealment to blocking line of sight. Also, regardless of how thick the forest actually is, if the line of sight goes into and out the other side of the forest, then it counts as line of sight blocking. Also, forests are rough terrain, which reduce your move by 2 inches. There are plenty of terrain types, but that's terrain features done for this video. We'll keep it simple. With the Nashers unable to charge through the forest, we know that one of them can see the rangers as they got shot by them. Seems like the perfect time to charge. Charges are movement speed plus 3 inches, plus the range of your weapon, which for the Nashers is 1 inch. So our total threat range is 10 inches. We move one of the models in our unit 9 inches towards the rangers, and sure enough, we end within 1 inch, and that means we performed a successful charge. We then pick up and place our other 2 Nashers so that they are within 2 inches of the first Nasher. Again, everything here is done on a model-to-model basis despite us collectively referring to them as units. So with their current placements, they are not in range and therefore unable to kill all 3 of these rangers. The rangers performed some smart blocking there. 100% intentional, no doubt. With the successful charge made, we can now attack. Each of these Nashers has 2 fell weapons, so they will all be able to make 2 attacks each. They also all have the Weapon Master weapon quality, which means they get an additional die on damage rolls. Let's attack. Mat of 7 into a def of 14, they need 7 to hit, the first attack hits. With a power of 13 into an arm of 13, the rangers are very dead, but let's go through just how dead. When you charge a model, your first attack gets boosted for the damage roll. Boosted means you get to roll an extra dice. An attack can only ever be boosted once, as you know. However, Nashers are also weapon masters, which means that their damage roll always gets an additional die. Additional dice are not capped. In theory, if they also had a buff from a spell giving them an additional dice, they could do 5 dice on their attack. Note that a boosted die and an additional die are not the same thing. Boost is limited to 1, additional are in theory unlimited. So, 13 power into 13 arm, rolling 4 dice, the ranger with 1 health does die, shockingly yes. We then have 2 abilities, Berserk and Blood Drinker, that trigger immediately after this model destroys another model. We choose to let Berserk happen, which gives us a free attack into a model. Luckily, we have another ranger within 1 inch. Okay, I've got to very quickly interrupt here. This is a how to play video, so you might be thinking I skipped a step. How did this Nasher get a kill and then suddenly be within 1 inch of the next model? Was there a reposition ability you didn't tell me about? Why did you skip that? You're ruining my immersion. Very briefly, this is an example. I completely misplaced both of these units. Just imagine, theatre of the mind here, guys and girls. Let's just pretend that he could have attacked 2 without having moved. Continue. If we didn't, then we would have to hit our own model. We will not get the charge bonus, as that is only for the first attack of a charge. Mat 7 into def 14 and we miss. The Nasher can now make its attack with its next weapon, needing a 7 and we hit. Again, this is a guaranteed kill. We get an extra dice for Weapon Master. We don't get a boosted dice because it's not the first attack, and even if we roll all 1s, the ranger dies. If you have 2 abilities that trigger off an attack, you first resolve abilities that don't cause another attack, and then abilities that do cause another attack. In this instance, Blood Drinker lets us regain D3 lost wounds and then end our activation. This means Berserk doesn't force us to hit our own model with a follow-up attack because we chose to end our activation. Now, none of the Nashers are in engagement range of any enemies, and so their activation ends. Oriax activates, so is going to move up and then cast 2 spells. Carnage on himself and Silence of Death on the Ravener. Carnage will give all friendly models +2 to their attack rolls against all enemies within Oriax's control range of 14, which is all of them. And Silence of Death will give the Ravener +2 damage. Oriax has spent all his focus. We then activate the Ravener, who charges into the Spectre. Now, war machines have a lot of extra things they can do, like pushing models around, but we're not going to do any of that, because this Ravener is an absolute beast, and as long as we don't fluff our rolls hard, should be able to kill the 22 health Spectre. We've charged, which gives our first damage roll a boost, as you know, but we need to hit first. We'll use the Fell Cleaver as it's our best weapon. Mat 7, but we're +2 thanks to Carnage. So Mat 9 into Def 13, we roll above the 6 we needed. POW 16 +2 for Silence of Death, additional die for Weapon Master, and boost die for charging, all into arm 17 but +2 because of his shield, so arm 19. With our POW being 1 below arm, that means whatever we roll, we are minusing 1 to the roll, and that's our damage. We deal so much damage. 15 damage on our first attack, and we are hitting a Warjack, so we actually roll a different coloured dice, which will tell us where this damage is dealt to. In the app, we tap the column to damage and put in our 15 damage. The reason rolling the column number is important is because damage is done in a specific order, and notice some of these boxes have letters in them. Once all of the letters of a specific letter are damaged, you lose whatever that letter controls. For example, the Spectre has lost all of L and M. L is its left hand, which means when it uses its force shield, it will roll 1 fewer dice for both the attack and damage roll, or make power or special attacks with it. Additionally, any special abilities granted by that now damaged system stop working, including the +2 arm from the shield. And M is movement, which means it can't run, charge, slam or trample anymore, and its def is set to 5. The second attack from Ravener will be its Mechano Claw. Mat 7 +2 for Carnage into def 5, because we're immobilized, means an auto hit. POW 17 +2 for Silence of Death. It's not boosted from the charge and no additional die for Weapon Master. 19 into arm 17, so our damage is dice +2. We're going to spend a focus to boost the attack. We have 1 focus left, but nothing to do with it as we just killed Spectre. There you go. Oops, oops. No gun to shoot, no spell to cast, we end the activation. The Keeper and Warlord move up, and that's the end of the Curse-bound turn, so we finally score. As this is the end of the second player's second turn, everyone is able to score for the first time. The Rangers are the only models within 2 inches of the lake, which gets them 1 VP. Moraine is on the 30mm objective, but that is contested by the Nashers. The Warlord is on the 30mm objective and contesting the forest from the Assassins. So at the end of turn 2, both teams have 1 VP. We move into round 3. Or we would, if this was a full game. But this is just a tutorial, and I've hopefully managed to batter in enough dice rolling that at this point you have figured out the basics. And there are fundamentals like reading a data sheet that I haven't gone over here, so you might be a touch confused. So this is a perfect time to stop this live fire exercise, allowing you to absorb what you've seen, and if you're brand new to Warmachine, go and watch the next video, Warmachine Basics. If you've played your first game or 2 of Warmachine, then check out Warmachine Advanced, where I get into some nitty-gritty details. Between these 3 videos, I explain enough to take you from genuinely having never played any war game before up to full Warmachine competency, where all you'd have left to learn is different faction playstyles, because you've got the foundation that the individual skills are built upon sorted. Anyway, thank you for watching. Spread this Warmachine playlist far and wide, and let's get Warmachining. I'm going to workshop that sign off. Bye.